Hello everyone. Today we will learn about subsystem in Simulink, its definition, how and when to use it in Simulink. I will open a document so that we can see the definition and detail of a subsystem. Now, we will see the definition of a subsystem. So what is the subsystem? The subsystem is a block that contains a subset of blocks within a model or system. The subsystem block can represent a virtual subsystem or a non-virtual subsystem. Non-virtual subsystem is a subsystem which controls when the contents of the subsystem are evaluated as a single unit or as an atomic execution. It creates conditionally executed subsystems that run only when an event occurs on a triggering, a function call, an action or an enable input. Virtual subsystem is a subsystem that is neither conditionally nor atomically executed. Virtual subsystems do not possess a checksum. In general, what is the subsystem? A subsystem helps us to arrange and organize a big model as a group of smaller subsystems, each defining a specific function. A subsystem can be considered as a block, with inputs as inputs and outputs as outputs to communicate with the other subsystem or blocks. The concept is similar to that of a function in C language. The subsystem with one input and one output looks like following. So the constant 1 is the input to the subsystem. There is some logic implemented inside the subsystem, and the output is output, which is connected to a scope, so that we can see the output on scope. So this was all about subsystem, its definition and what does it do. Now coming to Simulink, let's start with actual use case. So here, I have opened an untitled model in Simulink. Now coming to library browser. So here, there are different sections, imports and subsystems. You can see the subsystem section is present. I'll simply add a subsystem block to untitled model. There are two more ways of adding the block. Here if I click and start typing subsystem, then also I can insert the subsystem here. This is one way. Now I will just delete it, because I have already added using one of the method. That is by right-click and selecting Add to Untitled. We can also resize this window. Now I will just drag and drop here. You can see the subsystem block is added. Here we have discussed the methods of adding the subsystem into Simulink model. Now coming to help, library gives the location of subsystem as ports and subsystem. It gives the definition similar to what we have seen. Then there is property, which tells us about input and output. It tells us about subsystem and some properties which we can use. It is necessary information while using subsystem. So this is help about subsystem. Also there are additional topics. That's why I have opened another document, which is precisely only for subsystem. Now coming back to model. We will discuss a use case. I will explain you in detail about each step. I am going to create a counter. Counter which keeps on adding 1 to the output. It can add any number, but for now, I will add 1 with a constant value 1 and giving it as an input. Now for designing a counter we will require few library blocks. So I will take a adder block. Connect the output of adder to the output port. I will take the input from output of adder and connect it with the second input port of adder block. I will also connect input port to the first input of adder. Let's make the connection. So this is an adder logic. But this design will create an algebraic loop, as the output is fed back to the input, at the same instant, which is not possible. So to counter this we will add a unit delay, so my previous output will act as the input to the subsystem. Now this is my counter model. So I'm adding continuously the input, which is coming from unit delay block, then it goes to adder block. It will give counter output. Let's say it is a counter because it is always incremented by 1. Now to observe the output of this counter block, I'll just add a scope block. I'll connect scope only to the output port, because the input is a constant block with constant value. Now, this logic will implement as per the step size. So I will change this setting of variable step to fixed step with a value of 1 second, so that I will get 10 steps, because I want to simulate it for 10 seconds. This is done. Now in solver details, fixed step size is set to 1. With this we will click apply and click OK. Now, the subsystem is ready. I've changed the solver setting also as per requirement. Now here, I am executing it for 10 seconds and it will count till 10. That is, it will increment output by 10. Let's check the scope block to check the output. You can see the output is varies from 1 to 10. Starting from 1. Here the default initial state is 1, so it starts incrementing by 1. So that was my use case for how to use a subsystem and how to insert it. A subsystem will always have input port and output port. So this is basically used to define a logic. Now if I have a big model, then I can have the counter logic in one subsystem, and addition logic in another subsystem, or subtraction logic in a different subsystem. So it helps me to organize my bigger model into smaller units. And helps us to see the bigger picture clearly. Subsystem can be used at multiple levels and each level can be a unit functionality of the model. So that's all in subsystem. Thank you for watching.